Very happy evening to everybody here. So today we have gathered here on a special occasion where we have already completed the tax law and practice for CS executives exams today for the December 2023 batch. So here we are here to analyze the question paper as to how it was, what it was, and mind you, this is the new syllabus, which is the first time for which the CS executive has been conducting the tax law paper in the subjective manner rather than the objective type. All this while, till June 2023, we had the old syllabus, or which was having an option to write, or which was the exam was conducted in the objective type based. Okay, continuing from December 2023, there's both old syllabus and new syllabus. But the new syllabus is going to be subjective, and today we are here to analyze the new syllabus or the subjective based question paper, which was coming from the first time in the CS Executive Tax Law and Practice December 23. Okay, let's do a quick overall analysis of the question paper as to how it was. So we have part 1 and part 2 in the question paper. Part 1, 4 questions needs to be answered, and part 2, 2 questions need to be answered. And part 1 is focusing on the income tax based questions, and part 2 is on the indirect taxes, which is GST and customs. So let's quickly see what was there in part 1. And part 1 consists of 60 marks of questions. Part 1 consists of 60 marks of 60 marks of questions for which the answers needs to be written. So like I said, there are 4 questions and 15 marks each. So that makes 4 questions into 50, 60 marks of part 1. And there's 1 question in choice alternative. Okay, so you have 1 question in choice. That means the 4th question of the part 1 gives you 2 alternatives. That is question number 4 or question number 4A. You can either answer question number 4 or you can answer question number 4A. There you get a choice to answer. So that is the pattern in which the question paper that has been arrived at. Okay, moving further. Also to note here that there is 1 question which is a case-based, case study based. That is the first question in the part 1 is completely a case study based. You have a lot of information and you'll have to process all the concepts that has been learned in the entire income tax subject. So that is the 1 point that we have to remember and take it further. Okay, moving further in terms of the part 2. How does the part 2 questions look like? Part 2 is the balance, 40 marks questions. And here we have 2 questions, 20 marks each. That makes 40 marks of part 2. That makes 40 marks of part 2. And then here again, 1 question in choice. That means your second question, that is the 6th question of the total entire question paper. So question number 1, 2, 3, 4 is part 1. And question number 5, 6 is part 2. So 6th question as an alternative. That means either you can answer question number 6 or question number 6A. And that is the choice that all the students get to answer. Okay. Moving further, that we have first question number 5 in the part 2, which is a case study based. Okay. So this is the overall structure of the question paper of both part 1 and part 2. Let's quickly spend a couple of minutes on the dynamics of the question paper, the difficulty level, or how the question paper was designed, and what are the types of the questions that we have got. Okay. The question papers, the view on the question paper, on the glancing or reading of all the questions from the questions that it has come for the December 23 for the first time, the new syllabus, which is a subjective based question paper. So they're looking, the takeaways that we can see from the question paper is that one has to ensure that the detailed analysis has to go through, or the subject knowledge, concept-based knowledge is required, and they are focusing on the exclusion-based questions. Or when in the tax provisions, like we all discuss, there are certain inclusions and certain exclusions. What is excluded, or the specific provisions or the special provisions. Okay, a certain set of provisions is applicable to general category of people, but there is a certain specific provision which is applicable to the special category of persons. So the questions were based on such kind of special category or the exclusions in the entire definition. So these kind of questions were the key highlights of the question paper that was there in this attempt. Okay, so moving further, what kind of judgment we can give to the question paper? So whether it was easy or tough. So I don't say the question paper was easy or tough, or it all goes towards the preparation of a student who has gone to write the exam. Okay, it might be me or you or anybody who is going for the exam. It all depends upon the preparedness of the subject. Okay, so there I go and give the judgment for the question paper. It will be easy only when there is preparedness, only when there is preparedness. Preparedness is very, very important, and a detailed preparedness or a thorough preparedness, which is called as focus to detail. Focus to detail is required. Until now, people who had written old syllabus and gone to new syllabus, the technicalities of each of the concept is very important in answering the question paper for tax laws under new syllabus, because it goes to the attention to the details, and you need to remember each and nook and corner of the provisions in order to imply, analyze, and apply the provision to the question that has been asked for. So focus to detail is very important, and this will come only by constant revisions. A person with a constant revision would have definitely cracked through this, and it would have been very easy for him. And thorough on concepts, like I said, the concept based is very important. So this is the judgment on the QP, or the judgment on the question paper, today's question paper that has come in December 2023. Okay, so this is all about the overall analysis. Let's see how the weightage has been given to overall syllabus or the overall chapters, because few of them have few of them think that if I do a selective based study of certain chapters, that will be more than sufficient. That will be more than sufficient. Or I'll study only part one and then that is sufficient. Or I'll study only GST, that will be sufficient. So I observe here an equal weightage has been given overall all the chapters, and they have ensured that somehow each concept is being covered in some of the questions. Let's see how they have been doing this. So like I said, part one and part two, there is question number 1 to question number 6. So we know that part 1 consists of questions which are 15 marks each, correct? So each question is 15 marks. So 15 into 4 making 16 marks. So thereby, question number 1 is having a computation of total income, assessment of individual and tax liability. So it is a computation of total income consisting of all 5 heads of income provisions, set off and carry forward, clubbing provision, deduction provisions, and also added on it, we need to also analyze with respect to the new regime versus old regime, and then arrive at the tax liability of a particular individual based on the provisions that has been given. So here you have a set of questions. In a little while, we'll go on to see each of the question, how it has come. But here we are seeing on the topic to which the question pertains to. And here, like I said, there were 3 sub-questions in this main question number 1, and each of them carries 5 marks each. Okay. Similarly, this was the case study based question. And then we have 3 more questions, which is not a case study based. Each of the next three questions has sub questions. Okay, this is not a case study based question, but it has a 3 sub questions in each of it. So these 3 sub questions carries 5 marks each. So thereby, question number 2 has first sub question on section 35D, which is on preliminary expenditure and amortization of preliminary expenditure, which is covered under section 35D, and that was 5 marks for which the question was asked for. And then we had income from house property question in question number 2, part 2, or sub question 2, which is discovering or asking certain questions on the computation provisions of the income under the head house property. Then moving further to the third part, or the third question, third sub question under question 2, it was clubbing provisions. Clubbing provisions, that is income of other person included in assessment of individual's income. Okay, other person's income is included in the computation of the another person's income. So this is called as clubbing provisions. There again 5 marks. So these are the residual chapters. People think if I read only 5 heads of income, that is sufficient. But if you see here, clubbing provisions is coming for 5 marks, which is very interesting to look at it. And it's a small concept. If you have thoroughly understood each of the simple concepts of these smaller chapters, this would have been a icing on the cake and an easy walk to get the complete 5 marks. Then moving further, question number 3, the next question, the first segment of the question number 3 had question on set off and carry forward losses. This is again ancillary chapter or not from the heads of income. If you see, already we have covered 10 marks from the different smaller chapters. Okay, apart from the heads of income, there's already 10 marks which is coming from smaller chapters that the syllabus contains. So question number 3A had set off and carry forward of losses. And then if we move on to the second segment of question number 3, it was on a computation of income of a partnership firm, PGBP. Okay, this is either head of income, that is profits and gains, business or profession, profits and gains from business or profession. So of a partnership entity, okay, so this has 5 marks. And then interestingly, in the last 2 years, the finance minister of India had been making certain changes in the new tax regime, old tax regime, and there we go. There is a question on new regime and old regime, which one to choose, which is more beneficial for a particular person. So now when we see all of this, the question paper is moving towards a practical approach. A person who is writing the exam, and once he is qualified, he should be capable and competent enough to evaluate all these practical instances that would come across to him. So that is the whole objective, and they're coming with these kind of practical approach questions. And that was question number 3, segment 3. Then we had question number 4. Like I said, question number 4 had is an alternative question. Thereby, you have question number 4 and question number 4A. Each of this have 3 sub questions. So one is the question number 4A is a return filing. This again is an administrative procedural concept. A question on return filing, a loss return. Question was asked on how provisions with respect to the loss return. And this simple concept fetches you 5 marks. And this hereby we go to add like 15 marks is coming from the other than heads of income. So here I am keenly focusing on those students who are not focusing on the other chapters, but only giving weightage to heads of income. So the main key takeaway here for all of us to observe that the weightage is not only on the heads of income, but also on the other than heads of income. Moving further, the second segment again asked the question on deemed income provisions, the section 9 or section 5, which we read in the first chapter, overview of income. Okay, income, how the taxation of income, the charging provisions of the income. The question is coming from that particular concept. People, all of us think that it's only simple thing, whether it is first chapter is very basic, nothing to read, nothing to leave. See, but the concept or the point that I'm driving here is that what we intend to leave, considering that it is a simple thing which might not come in the exam, are the kinds of questions which are coming in the examination. Okay, so nothing is less important, nothing is more important. Give weightage equally to all the chapters is the fundamental takeaway that we are going to take away from this entire observation of the question paper. Then again coming, there's another question on the return filing. There's another question on the return filing for 5 marks. So all put together, out of 60 marks, around 25 to 30 marks is coming from other than heads of income. The other 30 marks is coming from the heads of income. So very, very clear indication that equal importance has to be given for all the concepts, including but not limited to smaller minor concepts. Okay, including but not limited to small and minor concepts. Moving on to question number 4A. This is the alternative. 4A, segment 1, TDS provisions. So provisions on TDS, which section, what limit, what tax rate. There are 5 sub questions in here, and each of this is being talking about one particular TDS provision, and that needs to be answered here. Then coming on to 4A, alternative question, and segment 2, here a capital gain question was being asked, that is called as capital gain computation. What is taxable and how much it is taxable on a sale of an immovable property. Okay, there again nuances were there, and it is not a simple calculation, sale consideration minus cost, you get the long-term capital gain or short-term capital gain. It was not straightforward question, but again, there I say that you will have to focus on detail, focus attention to detail and thorough preparedness, constant revisions, and concept-wise clarity is very, very important. So there, all the 4 questions comes to end of the income tax, where the weightage is divided across the length and breadth of all the chapters of chapter number 1 to 13 that was there in your syllabus, consisting of all the topics, all major things are considered. I don't see any topic which is being left unasked in the question paper. Okay. Thereby, moving on to indirect taxes from question number 5. Question number 5, the first question in the part 2 from the indirect tax is GST and customs. So here, a case study based question is being asked consisting of both GST provisions and customs provisions combined and integrated in the question itself. Thereby, I need to apply both GST and customs knowledge to answer this question. There I have 4 part questions, which is focusing on the case study, seeking questions on the case study to answer on each of the 4 different questions, 5 marks of each, which is 20 marks. So that is question number 5. Then comes question number 6, and 6 question number has 2 alternatives, question number 6 and question number 6A. Each of these questions have 4 sub questions. Each of this consists of 5 marks, making it to 20 marks. So question number 6A, focusing on value of supply. So value of supply provisions is being asked. And then question number 6B, composition registration provisions or composition and registration provisions. Question number 6C is talking about ITC provisions. And question number 6D is talking about customs. So customs here was a very simple question, and that is getting a weightage of 5 marks. And I see an entire thing roughly 10 to 15 marks is easily scorable from the customs, from the type of questions that they have asked for. And then the alternative 4 sub-questions in this question number 6A talks about the procedural provisions. There was 2 sublimits in terms of the tax payment and registration, which was 3 marks and 2 marks. And then comes the e-invoicing provisions. And then comes the non-compliance and the assessment provisions. And then the place of supply provisions. Each of these had 5 marks each, 6 alternative A, B, C, D. So this was the weightage, overall weightage that was given in terms of the question paper for part 1 and part 2. Yes, friends, and let's go into question-wise analysis now. You were waiting for all of this. Let's go to part 1, question number 1. Or before that, let me quickly summarize in terms of what was there in income tax. So in income tax, we had 5 main questions, out of which 15 sub-questions were there. 15 sub-questions were there. And each of the sub-question carries 5 marks each. Each of the sub-question carries 5 marks each. Thereby, am I required to write all the 5 questions? No, I am not required to write all the 5 questions because I had 1 question in choice. Thereby, I need to write only 4 main questions to be answered, which means how many sub-questions I need to write? I need to answer only 12 sub-questions. I need to answer only 12 sub-questions. This is for income tax. Now, let's see for GST and customs. The GST and customs had 3 main questions. Out of 3 main questions, it was divided into 12 sub-questions. And out of 12 sub-questions, each of the sub-question carried 5 marks each. Thereby, I need to look at it in terms of whether am I required to write all the 5 questions or should I write something less? Because I had 1 question in choice, thereby I need to write only 2 main questions to be answered. Out of how many sub-questions? I need to write 8 sub-questions for those 2 questions. So question number 6 and question number 4 are the alternatives that I have in order to choose which of those I can write for. Okay. Now, like I said, question number 4 had subsegments and question number 4A had subsegments. And question number 6 has 4 subsegments and question number 6A had 4 subsegments. I cannot pick and choose. I will write 1 sub-question from question number 6 and 1 sub-question from question number 6A. I cannot do that. I either have to select completely question number 6, all sub-questions, or question number 6A, all sub-questions. Question number 4, all sub-questions, or question number 4A, all sub-questions. I think with this, there were many doubts as to how will the question paper format look like, what kind of questions, how many questions will come, what will be for choice, how much each of the question marks will be looked for, all of that. So I think all of that is cleared in this question paper, and the review is being completely classified into how and what the question paper looks for. Coming to each of the question. So part 1, question number 1, see, they have given a particular, starts with a question which is talking about a residential status, gives some information in order to look at the residential provisions to be answered. Okay, in order to look at the residential, goes on to say compute the tax liability based on the salary income, bonus, perquisites like club membership, residential telephone bill, and contribution to employer fund. Each of this has to be seen from the nuances and the provisional understanding of each of this concept. And then there is something called as the children education facility being provided by the employer for two of his children, and that also needs to be ascertained. Continuing further, he had taken two loans, which goes on to say that this was a housing loan, and also the loan which was consisting of a vehicle loan. And these were the two loans, and some in principal payment, interest payments were made. Here we have two things to look at it. One is from the income from house property and the deductions under section 80E and 80EEB, which needs to be reviewed and evaluated very closely in order to answer these questions. Further, there were certain information about the contributions to the political parties. Considering all of this, there were three questions which was asked for: determine residential status of Vijay and also compute income from salary for assessment year 23-24 on the assumption that he has opted the scheme 115 BAC. With reference to loan taken and contribution to political parties, compute the amount of tax benefits or deductions available to Vijay under various provisions of Income Tax Act. So this was the three sub-segments. So if you have reviewed or if you have studied each of these concepts very well, I think connecting the dots will not be a difficult job. Only thing, we should know where the dot is and we should plot the dot appropriately, which makes the connection of dots a simpler job in the examination hall. Moving on to question number 2, three sub-questions. The first sub-question is talking about the 35D preliminary expenses. Here, very clearly that people will know that there is a 5% of cost of project or 5% of capital employed in the new unit. This two alternatives is available for two different types of entities. One is for a partnership and one is for the private limited company. So the private limited company has an option to select either of 40 lakhs or 45 lakhs, whichever is higher. But in case of partnership firm, there is no option to select the capital employed in the new unit, but we'll have to only stick to cost of project. So thereby, here it is an irrelevant information since it's a partnership firm, the capital employed in the new unit. So that will be a critical observation. Like I said, the exclusions or the specific provision to a specific entity. So that is where I am telling these kind of questions are coming in order to test the knowledge of the student. Then comes the house property information, the municipal value, fair rent, how you are arriving at the gross annual value. And then you will have to see in terms of the municipal tax due, municipal tax paid for the last year, current year, interest on monies borrowed, section 24A deductions, okay, if it is self-occupied and all of that. And this has to be computed in terms of section 115 BAC. And there is no much complication in this, very simple thing. Provided for this interest on monies borrowed, which is a slight deviation that they've asked for, but otherwise, that is also, if you are practiced well, that is also a easy cakewalk. Moving further, the next question is on the clubbing provisions. Here, it is having two minor children's income and minor children's. There are 6-7 pointers. If you remember those 6-7 pointers, this would have been a very easy cakewalk, and this could have been answered in less than 3 to 4 minutes. And that easy the question was all about in terms of 4-5 pointers that they have asked for. Moving further to question number 3, we have the residential concept or a non-resident having certain incomes. We'll have to calculate the, or in terms of non-resident or a resident. Okay, this was a resident question or a resident individual having incomes and losses. Okay, losses and incomes. So set off and carry forward of loss provisions being asked for all segments of income. Around 9 categories of incomes and losses are given. Which loss can be set off against which income? And very simple, very easy, that if we would have learned section number 70 and 71, this would have been an easy cakewalk. Okay, moving further on question number 3, part B. Here we had in terms of the PGBP question here, where the question was on a partnership firm working, two working partners who had salary, who had the contribution, capital contribution, and here also certain brought forward losses, unabsorbed depreciation, and all of those were there. Here, 40B was the critical provision, that is the partner's remuneration, how much of it can be allowed, how much of it cannot be allowed, and brought forward losses for assessment year 18, 19, and 14, 15. They're asking certain questions of how to set off the brought forward losses. So if you see PGBP integrated with set off and carry forward losses, the question is such way that two different concepts are integrated in one single question. Thereby moving further, there is something called a scientific research, section 35, and the depreciation. So this is also slightly continuation of a set off and carry forward dominated question, but it is PGBP question. Moving further, the third subsegment of question number 3, where we are required to calculate the tax liability if tax liability considering the new tax regime and the old tax regime, which is very important to see whether certain benefits are available under old tax regime and certain deductions are not available under new tax regime. So we'll have to compute two columns, what will be the liability in case of new tax regime and what will be the liability in the old tax regime, and advise which is beneficial. And here most of us will compute and not give the verdict and not give the conclusion as to what is beneficial, which is very important for us to look at it. Moving further, question number 4. Let's see what is there in question number 4. So if you see here, question number 4, I have divided question number 4 and 4a. On the left-hand side, what you see is question number 4, and on the right-hand side, what you see is question number 4a. Either you attend all these 3 questions of question number 4 or all these 3 questions of question number 4a. Very simple. What is the term return of loss? You will have to explain what is return of loss. What happens if the loss return has not been filed? Very simple, very simple. If this provision is being known, you'll have to write 3-4 points, you get 5 marks. Okay, there is only 3 to 4 points that is there to be written. And here again, income deemed to accrue or arise. This is on the deeming income provisions. This is a little technical. Those of you would have learned this, you would have got 5 marks out of this. Again, small theoretical questions. And then here, there's a return of income. Again, defective return, what has to be done, how many days the time will be there. If it is not done, what happens, whether it will be further extended, a small provision. Again, this all 3 questions on the left-hand side is a jinx question, which the answer is very simple. Answer is very less. If you would have learned this, if you would have read this, this question could have been written in less than 10 minutes, entire thing, less than 10 minutes. I think you would have, even somebody would have known each of it very clearly, can write it in 5 minutes. That's how it is. That's how easy it is. Now moving on, question number 4a, there are 3 segments, TDS provisions. There are 5 transaction details that have been given, and we need to analyze whether there is any applicability of TDS under which section. That is what is being asked for, and that was also simple. And then comes the capital gain question. Somebody purchased something, and there were too many dates that are given, and there is a quick recap that you will have to do in terms of the applicable stamp duty value. So there is a small challenge or a small trick that has to be used, or a small point that needs to be kept in mind before taking the stamp duty value based on the dates. That is the only quick, simple adjustment that has to be reminded here. Otherwise, this was a simple question that could have been answered. Then comes the simple question: what is, there are 5 different transactions being given. What is capital in nature? What is revenue in nature? Chapter number 1. Again, very simple overview. So overview, chapter number 1 has around 10 marks easily coming from this examination. Chapter number 1 is 10 marks. Other than heads of income is around 25 to 30 marks. Then only heads of income is coming for 20 marks. Now, if you see the weightage, it is going that more than 30 marks is coming from other than heads of income. So that was all part 1. Now quickly moving on to part 2, GST and indirect tax. Okay. Now the first question had all kinds of information with respect to registration, whether when did he become liable to register and what was the transactions that he did, when did he do those transactions, when did he complete the service. So the time of supply, value of supply, location of supply, the triggering of registration, all of that information is given. And also in terms of that, there is a particular transaction which was exported, and export related certain questions are also given in terms of what rate that you will have to consider, what date you will have to consider for the rate of duty. Is very simple. We have learned it very easily, and if you would have remembered those dates and concepts, it would have been very easy. What will be the effective date of registration, and also is there any requirement to issue revised invoice, or correct legal provision should form part of your answer. So the registration chapter, if that 4 or 5 initial concepts will take care of this. With reference to transaction with Vikram Limited, determine the time of supply for the purpose of payment of tax. So the time of supply provision is coming here. Decide whether in respect of goods supplied to Vikram Limited, MNO and Co. needs to mandatory generate e-way bill or not. Now here again, very simple, if e-way bill provisions, when and what it became applicable, because in the last 1.5 year, dynamically the e-way bill applicability provisions have been revised. Okay, earlier it was 500 crore, then they brought it to 250, 100 crore, 50 crore, 20 crore, 5 crore, and all of that. So that based on that, you will have to remember these dates. And next, export duty payable needs to be determined based on the information given with respect to FOB price, the date of presentation of shipping bill, let export order, and the rate of exchange and the rate of duty applicability needs to be analyzed very keenly. This was question number 5, and it was very simple, except for the one of the question here, which was little tricky in terms of e-way bill and in terms of the date of registration revising invoice. But part B and part D was simple and easy. Then comes the last question, question number 6. Here again, you have an option to write whether it's question number 6 or question number 6A. On the left-hand side, you see question number 6, 4 sub-questions, and question number 6A, 4 sub-questions. You cannot pick and choose to write one part here, one part there, but you will have to write entire 4 sub-questions of question number 6 or entire 4 sub-questions of question number 6A. Thereby, now let's quickly look at what kinds of questions being asked for. Here again, the question was asked in terms of the calculation of the tax liability, calculation of the value of supply or the value of supply. How is the value of supply? There is rebate given, there is taxes levied, there is extra late fee rebate. So for the month of March 2023, there are certain implications. Very simple question. 3-4 adjustments needs to be remembered. That will take you to the conclusion of the answer. The next we had the input question. What are the inputs that can be claimed in terms of the certain transactions given? ITC provisions, input tax credit, section 16 of the act needs to be remembered in order to answer this question. Then comes the question on the composition scheme. What is the applicability of the composition scheme and how the composition provision applicability needs to be checked. So will your answer be different if Yash is a trader and this was applicable in terms of the, because composition scheme was specifically applicable for the traders and not for manufacturer. So Yash was a manufacturer. So the answer will come as no, and then if it is trader, then the main answer will start. So this is where I'm telling the exclusion is mainly focused, and that is where important for us to learn the exclusion. And this is a cakewalk question. They've asked calculate the FOB value, cost of insurance, cost of freight, and assessable value under customs law, where only the CIF value is given, that is $8,000, and exchange rate is given, and very simple question. And this is easy claiming marks of 5 marks, simple question. So this is your 4 questions on question number 6, and then comes the question number 6A, which is the first question talks about the procedural compliance in terms of the payment, and the next thing in terms of the late fee. Okay, so this again is a simple thing, 3 + 2 marks. And then you had one question which is asking on the e-way bill, again simple thing. Again, like I said, dynamically the limits for e-way bill applicability has been revised in the last 1.5 years. So they are testing on that knowledge whether the student is aware or not. Then moving on the adjudication proceedings, they're asking certain adjudication, some liability is not being paid, some default is there. If default is there, what happens? Whether they can take certain kind of actions, whether they can proceed with certain proceedings and recoveries, whether or not that can be done is something needs to be answered in this question for a 5 marks of the question. Then comes in terms of the place of supply, there is certain questions. Rakesh being in the event, so this is a casual taxable person or casual taxable person, where he, based on the event, he goes and registers in different places. So casual taxable person provisions needs to be analyzed in terms of these 4 different instances that has been given for a person conducting events in one place and organizing events in another place. So you'll have to look at this in terms of casual taxable person and the regular provisions both. So these were the types of questions that had come for all of us in the December 2023 under new syllabus containing subjective based questions. So I feel, like I said, the verdict is that with preparedness, with thorough glancing of the clarity, attention to detail, and constant revisions would have made an easy walkthrough of all the questions. And I feel it was the institute is moving towards looking for practical based questions and application based questions and not direct questions. So thereby the institute is ensuring every student is ready to go to market after qualification. So with that, let me sign off here and then wish you all the best for your further examination. Thank you all.